Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Yassine, and I've been using the same equipment or the same video gear since I started my channel about 2 years ago, and I finally got a chance to upgrade and get some new video gear. And when I say video gear, I'm talking about camera, lenses, lighting, audio stuff. So I recently upgraded all that stuff over the last couple of months, over the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and just the holiday season. I got a bunch of new cool tech and I'm super excited. I've actually only shot 2 videos with it, my last video and this one. So here we go. So since the beginning, I was shooting with the Sony a6500. I love the camera, Sony a6500. It's a mirrorless camera that can shoot 4K at 30 frames per second, and it can also shoot 1080p at 120 frames per second. So it does really good slow motion. It's got great autofocus. The only downside to that camera is that it doesn't have a flip out screen. So if you really need a flip out screen, which I use, but I went ahead and got an external one, then that's something you want to keep in mind. And also it doesn't have touch screen when you are navigating around the menus, but you do have touch screen when you are using it for point of focus, or when you're taking a picture or video and you just want to touch which part the camera needs to focus on. Besides those two downfalls, the Sony a6500 is a workhorse. It did all the video shooting that I did over the last 2 years, and I still have it. I haven't gotten rid of it. I use it sometimes for a B cam, and I'm trying to do dual camera shots. So that is the reason why I kept it. And just the size of it. When I'm traveling, I rather take that than what I'm shooting with right now, which I will get into in a few minutes. Now, in terms of lenses, you could get Sony lenses, which are probably the best for Sony cameras, but I decided to go with Sigma lenses because Sigma makes some really good lenses. So obviously I went ahead and got the tech YouTuber lens of choice, the Sigma 18-35 f1.8, and I've been using that for the last 2 years for basically almost everything. And that camera is great except for when it comes to autofocusing. It's decent on focusing, but it makes this really weird noise. So if you are using autofocus all the time, then this is not a lens that you can use. And I don't really use autofocus. Like even this shot right here that I'm doing, I just set my manual focus and I don't move around too far up ahead or far back. So I'm not gonna go out of focus. And then when I'm doing B-roll, I usually set my focus, pan away, and then pan to it. So I don't really need to use autofocus. So if you don't need to use autofocus, then I would definitely recommend the Sigma 18-35 f1.8. But alongside, over the last couple of years, I've also picked up the Sigma 16mm f1.4. Great camera for vlogging, great camera for wide angle at 16mm, so it'll get a lot of stuff. And then I also picked up the Sigma 30mm f1.4, and that one is also a great lens for everyday use. Whether you want to take portraits, whether you want to do these facing of the camera for YouTube, or you want to do B-roll, I feel like that 30mm, which is equivalent to right around 48, close to 50mm on a full frame, is a perfect focal length for everything that you want to cover and everything that you want to shoot. So that is the three main lenses that I've been using with my Sony a6500 over the last 2 years, and they have performed extremely well. I know Sigma recently released a new 56mm f1.4, and I would have definitely got that, but I decided to go full frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into the camera later on. I just want to cover everything that I've been using and then transition to everything that I use now. So in terms of lighting, I'm using two soft boxes that I got from Amazon from a company called Lime Studio or Lima Studio. I honestly can't even remember the name, but they were just some cheap studio softbox lights that were about $100 for a pair of two. Eventually down the road, I replaced the actual bulbs that it came with LED bulbs. So that's something you could do. But if you're just starting and you want lights, I think these two are great. The only thing is they are a little harsher than professional softboxes, but you could always buy diffusion sheets and just tape it over and put a couple of layers to soften up the light. So that's what I've been using in terms of lighting. And then in terms for audio, I've been using a shotgun mic from Sennheiser. Don't remember the exact model number, but I'll put it somewhere on the screen. And I've been plugging that directly into my camera and just using it that way. And it's been giving me better audio than if I were to just use the built-in mic from the camera. So I haven't had any issues. and I have upgraded that too. So I talked about the camera, the lenses, the lighting, and the mic, and that's basically the four major things that you need when you want to make a video, because if you have those four decent stuff, then you're going to be able to make some good quality videos. So fast forward 2 years later, now I have upgraded to full frame. I went ahead and got the Sony a7 III, and ever since this camera got announced, it was just like, I need to get this in my hands. Like, there's nothing I could say that hasn't already been said about the Sony a7 III. It's got one of the best autofocus systems out there right now. It's using this autofocus system from the Sony a900, which is their professional grade camera. It improved on battery life from the mirrorless cameras a6300 and 6500. And overall, it's a great package, and it comes in around $2,000, and you can't beat that. There's not a camera that goes toe-to-toe with the Sony a7 III. That comes in around $2,000, so I had to pick it up. Plus, I've been shooting Sonys, so it was just a natural progression of an upgrade. And then, in terms of lens, I struggled to figure out which lens that I wanted to start off with. Eventually, I know I'm going to get more lenses, but I didn't know where to start. I wanted something that I could do, you know, videos like this where I'm talking to the camera, and also do some B-roll videos, and then just wait for better lenses and save up for it. Because when you spend $2,000 on a camera, you don't want to get a cheap lens, because what's the point of getting a nice camera if you're going to get a cheap lens? And then secondly, you may not have the money to spend on a lens right away because you just dropped a lot of money on the camera. So it was an internal struggle. I had to go back and forth, did a lot of research, but in the meantime, I've just been shooting with the Sigma 18-65 on the body of the Sony a7 III, and that works really well. But eventually, I settled on the Tamron 28-70 f2.8, and that's what I'm currently shooting with right now. That is a great lens. When it first came out, it had issues with autofocus, but then Tamron went ahead and did a software update, a firmware update, that you can go online and download it, and then, you know, just update your firmware, and that fixed all the autofocus problems. So I got the newest version about a couple weeks ago, and I've been using it. I love it. It's an amazing lens. It can cover videos like this where I'm talking to the camera at 28 millimeters, and then I could also zoom in at 75 millimeters and get some really nice crispy B-roll or take some portrait photos. So that is the lens that I'm using with my Sony a7 III. Now, in terms of lighting, there were a couple of lights that I contemplated between, but eventually I just ended up getting the Aputure 120D Mark II, because I was like, eventually I'm gonna want to get the Aputure 120D. So why, you know, spend money on something cheaper where I'm gonna have to resell it and it's gonna lose value? So I bit the bullet, and I have been saving for a couple of years with my old lighting setup. So I went ahead and got the Aputure 120D Mark II, and then also the Aputure Dome, but I didn't get the Dome, the second gen. I got the first gen just because it was out of stock, and the only difference is how fast you can put it together between the first gen and the second gen. And since I'm doing all my shots here in the studio, I don't need to be taking it apart and putting it back together all the time. So I saved myself 60 bucks, and I went ahead and got it. And that's my upgrade. Oh, I almost forgot. So for audio, the audio, I decided to keep the shotgun mic that I had because I really liked the way it sounded, and it, you know, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But instead of going directly into the mic, I went ahead and got a Zoom H1. So right now the mic is right here, and then it's plugged into the Zoom H1. So all the audio gets recorded into the Zoom H1. And I found that it's a little bit marginally better than recording directly into the camera, but eventually I do want to get like the Zoom H4 or something of higher standards so that I can have better audio. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is my monitor, because like I said, the Sony cameras, other than their newest version, the Sony a6400 that they recently released, and their point and shoot cameras, they don't have flip up screens. So for me, I'm using a 5-inch Saucony or Saucony, something like that. I'll put a link down below in the description. A Saucony monitor, and that monitor is great. It has a bunch of features. It's got focus peaking, it's got zebras, it's got histogram, it's got false color, it's got even aspect ratios. So recently I started shooting 2:1 aspect ratio because more and more cell phones are becoming 2:1, and most of the time I'm consuming YouTube videos on my mobile phone, so I'm just assuming that everybody else is also consuming theirs on a 2:1 cell phone. So I started shooting in 2:1 aspect ratio. So when I set my framing, I can't really set that on camera. I've seen some hacks online on YouTube where people are actually taping the top and bottom of their LCD screens on their monitors to get the 2:1 aspect ratio for the framing. But with this Saucony monitor, you can actually select a bunch of different aspect ratios. So I have it set to 2:1, and then that way it lets me get exact cropping that I want. Anyway, that is the gear that I've been using for the last 2 years, and this is what I have upgraded to since the last couple of months. If you have any questions about the gear or how to use it, or just anything that I talked about today, then definitely let me know down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. I'll leave a link for everything that I talked about down below in the description if you want to check it out. And if it's your first time here, consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay plugged.